As springtime rolls around, we were doing some cleaning around the apartment, and when it came to dust off the board game shelf, I couldn't help but notice that some games had a thicker layer of dust than others. And it occurred to me, I have a number of games sitting on my shelf that I just haven't touched in a while. And it really kind of, inspired me to maybe move some of these games out of my collection. If you're an apartment dweller like myself, space is a big factor. And just generally, it's kind of a shame to see games sitting there that you know you're never going to play, and why even bother keeping them? Let them move on to other tables and other people who might play them. And so the reason of this video is to both help myself justify and talk myself through why I'm getting rid of some of these games, and hopefully maybe inspire you guys to have some thoughts and what are some reasons you might want to get rid of games in your own collection, right? It's a hard decision, I understand. You get a certain emotional attachment to these games. Most likely you did a bunch of research before getting them and you were so convinced like this was going to be a game you're going to be keeping and playing forever, and sometimes that just doesn't work out that way. And I think it's healthy and good to kind of keep a flow of in and out of new games and, refining and keeping things you like, but not being afraid to get rid of things that, you're kind of forcing yourself to play or you just never play flat out. Let's go ahead without further ado and kind of talk about these 8 games that are leaving my collection. Alright, so first up we have a game without too much dust on it because I have played it a couple times throughout the year, and that is going to be Kemet, Blood and Sand. And this game was really my attempt to try to find a game that has, that kind of troops on a map, very highly interactive with combat, controlling areas on a map, that kind of game. And I was hoping Kemet would kind of fill that niche that I was looking for. I think what really caught my interest in this game originally was the kind of technology system that's in it. So the resource that you get in this game is spent primarily to get these technology tiles that will make you kind of specialize and more proficient in certain kind of areas of the game. And that really captured my interest. And I do think that's kind of the shining feature of the game when we were playing it. Where it fell a little short with me was the kind of general just moving troops around. I thought it was a little convoluted. The combat never felt super fun for us. And so, the couple times we did play it, it was like, it's good, but for a game this size in a very big box, if we're not loving it, it's kind of, let's see what else that might fit better for me. And so I still do hope to find this kind of miniature-based troops game. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know, since I certainly am looking for it. But unfortunately, Kemet didn't quite hit the mark, so it is on its way out. Up next, we have a really charming and quite nice-looking game. This is Century Golem Edition in Endless Road. And so this is the third game in the kind of Century Golem Edition line. I still have the first Century Golem Edition, that's not going anywhere. But the third one here is kind of a worker placement game primarily, where similar to all of them, you're collecting golems and getting resources to get these golem cards and the little nice looking gem pieces. The really good kind of interesting hook in this one is that when you take a spot in this game, you can choose to dedicate multiple workers, one more than the person who took that spot already, to kind of kick them out. And I really like that ability to kind of, if you really want a space, you can really dedicate a lot of resources to getting it. And I think that's the kind of coolest thing about this game. Outside of that, pretty standard worker placement type stuff. I already have a number of worker placement games that I enjoy more than this. And so this is one of those games that if I'm reaching for a game in that type of genre, I was never reaching for this. One interesting note is that we did also play the Century Golem Edition and an Endless Road where you can kind of combine them. And I thought that did create a really interesting game. But it's almost like one of those things where I'm kind of going through the effort of combining 2 games, which is a little complicated, when I could just get a single game that is already more complex and would be more fulfilling than smashing these 2 together. And so a situation where I'm never going to play an Endless Road by itself, it doesn't make sense to have it just for the sake of combining it with another one, if that makes sense. So unfortunately, Golem Edition, Century Golem Edition and Endless Road is taking the road out of my collection, but I did enjoy the time we spent together. Alright, up next we have a cooperative game here, Atlantis Rising, the second edition from Elf Creek Games. And I'm generally a fan of cooperative games, and what drew me to this one was, first of all, it's gorgeous, the components, the art, it looks really, really good. But the core mechanic, that is this kind of dice placement, worker placement, to do actions around, in like a kind of a co-op setting is really interesting. I like dice placement as kind of a general mechanic. And this one has a cool kind of technology that you have to unlock to actually save Atlantis. And so while that is, you're getting these technologies to make the game easier, but also Atlantis is sinking more and more rapidly. And so the kind of tension and pacing of this game is top notch. I really enjoy that as it ramps up. And we have played this a good amount, getting through all the technologies, playing it in different difficulties and all that. It's just kind of gotten to the point where we've played it a bunch, and the kind of negative against this game is that it looks great and it's very immersive and fun. The setup is a little bit of a bear though, because the actual city of Atlantis kind of is like almost like a starfish shape, where in the center you have the core of the city, and then you kind of have these branching out paths that you have to build every time with these cardboard pieces, and they all kind of fit with each other. And it's like building a little puzzle every time, and it's always a little bit of a headache, even after playing it a bunch. And so now that we've played it a good amount, and we're reaching for a co-op game, we're never going to Atlantis Rising, right? Because the kind of energy of activation to actually start playing is always a little bit higher than what we want to do. And so for that reason, we feel satisfied and we're ready to kind of let it sink into the ocean and out of the collection. I will say that if you know of any other kind of co-op games that utilize dice placement like this game does, I would love to hear about it, because it is a core mechanic that I like, that I'd love to kind of see other games that explore that space. If you guys are enjoying this video, please remember to like and subscribe to join the channel. It means a lot to me, and it makes making these videos all that much more fun to have you guys around. But moving on, we have another cooperative game here with Night of the Living Dead Zombicide. This one kind of breaks my heart to get rid of. I have a poster for Night of the Living Dead right over there. I'm a huge George Romero fan, a huge zombie fan in general. So I actually got this secondhand. Really didn't have too much interest in the Zombicide series, in all honesty. This is my first kind of exposure to that system, and I think my first CMON game in general. But really the theme is what captured me. And I think it was a good introduction to the kind of Zombicide system. I really like the balance of this kind of black and white, very slow moving Romero mode, and then you get to certain points of the game and like your characters go into this super colorful Zombicide mode where they're like these badass, doing all this badass stuff. And I thought the cadence of that really was interesting, switching back and forth between it. I do like that this game, it's a campaign because you're kind of telling the story very loosely of the movie. I also like that it can also be scenario based. If folks are comfortable with it already, you can kind of just replay scenarios that you like. I also saw there's a good amount of like community support for this game. On Board Game Geek, people have made custom campaigns. They've kind of like spiffed up some of the pre-existing materials. So there is a good amount out there if you're looking to keep adding more content to that game. It is really nice to see kind of a dedicated fan base to this Night of the Living Dead game. But again, similar to Atlantis Rising, we've kind of played through all the missions. Setting this game up is kind of no easy task either, and so just one of those things where it breaks my heart because I almost want to keep this as a piece of memorabilia just because I love the movie so much. Just look how evocative this box is. It's terrifying. It's just scary sitting on your shelf, which I kind of love. But it is a big box, and I really just don't see us going back to play it super often, so unfortunately we're going to lay it down in its grave out of the collection and say goodbye to the Night of the Living Dead with a heavy heart. The next game is probably the one I played the least before choosing to get rid of it, just because I really didn't jive with it too much. And that is Imperial Settlers Empires of the North. And so this is like tableau building the game, where it is purely kind of card driven, where you kind of have your own little civilization, you're taking actions to get resources, you're raiding islands, you're kind of adding to your empire. And I think I liked the idea of building out your empire. I like that kind of engine building of getting things, going out to explore, raiding, all feeding into each other. What didn't quite jive with me with this game is it's very expansive. The tableau that you're kind of building in front of you as you add to your empire can get really, really large. And every turn there's like, this triggers this, triggers this, triggers this cascading combo effect, which I get that people can really, really love. And in general, I do like, it's hard because something like Everdell, not that they're super similar, but it also kind of has that tableau building where one card triggers another card triggers another card. I just thought it was I just felt a little overwhelmed playing it. It was almost like too much to keep up with once you start to get a certain amount of cards out. And it is really fun and satisfying, and it's one of those games where, hey, if someone asks me, I'll play it, but not something I felt like I was personally going to go back to and keep playing. So for that reason, we're going to let Empires of the North sail on out of here and hopefully find someone who enjoys it a bit more than I do. So next up is probably the best example of a game that we've just outgrown, in all honesty. And that is going to be Summer Camp from Phil Walker Harding. And this is probably the game that I would best describe as the perfect introduction to deck building. And so the kind of main mechanic of this game is going down these 3 different tracks with your little summer campers and deck building to let them move spaces to kind of win this race. And what drew me to this game is I have played some more like traditional deck building games, something like your Dominions. What I don't like about those is that I feel like I need something to complement deck building. I don't like doing it for the sake of doing it. It just never is quite, I don't know, fun, honestly, for me to do. And so for a game like Summer Camp, where you have deck building as the backbone, but also on top of that, you kind of have this race going on, it is really intriguing. And I got this on clearance for like 10 bucks or something. Like really, like the components and production of this for the price you can usually find it at on clearance, at Target at some points, it is a really good value. And especially if you kind of have lighter gamers or you want to introduce people to deck building, I think this is a really good game for that. The kind of different, there's like 6 or 7 different activity decks that you choose, and you pick 3 of them to go out on each game. And it's really good variety, good replayability. We have played it a good amount of times. It's one of those games where once you've played through all the activity decks and a couple mix and matching of them, it just kind of is a little thin of a game. This is actually a game that also kind of was directly replaced with another game that I really love from Reiner Knizia called The Quest for El Dorado. And that's another deck building game with also a racing on top of it, where you're these like adventurers going through trying to race to El Dorado. And it just has a little bit more kind of meat on the bones as far as the deck building and the kind of strategy behind it. So Summer Camp, I think it's an excellent buy if you find it, especially on sale. I think it is really fun for a number of plays, but unfortunately just kind of as you start to replay it enough times, it just starts to feel a little samey after a while. And for that reason, we're kind of okay with Summer Camp moving on from the collection. The next game is probably the easiest one. Let's take an easy one for once. And that is going to be Unlock Secret Adventures. This was our first Unlock game, trying to dip our toes into the kind of escape room genre of games. And this was really solid. We've heard good things about them. I think the kind of light app integration is really good. These are non-destructible. If you like escape room games, I'm guessing you've already heard about this. And we're going to kind of just give it to a friend of ours, let them play it, hopefully just pay it forward, let the game keep going on to folks who like it. And yeah, we'll be on the lookout. One's on sale, we'll pick up another Unlock. They're fun for a couple nights of just playing through them. But of course, the kind of nature of them being puzzles, they're not terribly replayable. Once you wait a while, you kind of just forget the answers to them. But, we're good kind of passing it on to other folks who would enjoy it and, moving it on out of here. All right, last and certainly not least, a little bit of an awkward time to be getting rid of this game, I guess. We have the GOAT, the classic Catan. And of course, like many of us, this was one of the first games that kind of was introduced to me getting into board games, and I picked it up, and I really don't like it. It's almost become a cool, contrarian, like hipster thing to say that you don't like Catan. Does not mean to come off that way, but I'm really not a big fan of negotiation and trading in games. Just not a mechanic that I enjoy all that much. Catan is very heavily into that. And again, this is one of those games that everyone and their mother has. So if I really wanted to play Catan, it is just one friend away if I want to get together and play it. The other thing beside the training that I don't like is that sometimes, this is any game with dice, I suppose, but sometimes you just never get those numbers rolled on those resources that you need, and it could just be arduous. Like, it'll just go around the whole table. It's like, oh, I didn't make anything, so I guess I'm just gonna pass and keep going. It's just never that much fun. I know that expansions, a number of them I've heard kind of help improve and kind of smooth out the game. And unfortunately, I have not played it with any of the expansions, so if there's one in particular that you think I should seek out, try to play with, please let me know. I'm curious to find out. But you know, okay letting it go. Again, so many other folks have it that if I want to play it, I'm sure we can find someone who has it, but don't feel the need to have it in the shelf here. Okay, so that will do it for the 8 games leaving my collection this spring. I really don't have too large of a collection, so I don't know how often I'll be doing this kind of larger scale pushing out of games, but I've had some Kickstarters fulfill recently, and they're pushing and vying for space, so some of the things I don't think I'm going to get played too much had to go. And, you know, after filming this video, it was a little cathartic, and does make me feel a little more confident in choosing to get rid of these games. But I would love to know, do you guys have any of these games? Have they left your collection? Are you retaining one of these specific games because you love it for a particular reason? Are there any games that you're grappling with thinking about getting rid of? This comment section can be a good game getting rid of support group. I would love to hear what you guys think. And again, if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more board game content. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see ya on the next video. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more videos like this. I also have a Twitter and Instagram where I post thoughts and photos of games I'm playing throughout the week, and I hope to see you there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.